I Hello. I recently spent some time digging a little deeper into AI and thought I'd share some of what I learned. This is going to be a little bit about AI, kind of the fundamentals of how it's done, and then looking at its impact on careers. So there's a bunch of lingo and jargon that can make it quite forbidding to try to learn, like machine learning, neural networks, large language models, generative AI, context, head, stuff like that. But what I discovered was that it's possible to get a decent understanding of the basics without really knowing too much computer science or maths. So that was pretty heartening and satisfying for me. Uh, Starting with a basic idea of one part of how ChatGPT works. Uh, it works by predicting the next word in the sentence. What I mean by that is, I'll talk with an example. So, if you ask it what are good colleges for mass communication in India, the response I got was something like this. India has several top-notch colleges for pursuing a career in mass media. Here are some of the best ones, and then a list of those. But how ChatGPT or any of the other major language AI tools do it is they construct the response word by word. So what that means is GPT processes the question and comes back with India, just one word, which is the first word of the response. And then it takes India and the question and it comes back to the second word, which is India has. And then India has several, and it constructs a response word by word. Mm. So that's just an interesting detail. It's quite counterintuitive. You wouldn't think that it's done this way. Um, so ChatGPT is implemented as a neural network. So neural networks are a computer science thing that's modeled on human neurons. We won't talk too much about the neuron. The top diagram here is how a neuron looks in practice. The bottom is an artificial neuron or an artificial neural network. Um, that's a symbolic representation of that. So let's dig into the bottom version a little more. So those little balls that you saw in the previous diagram, you can call them nodes. And nodes are pretty simple. So nodes have inputs. I1 and I2 are the inputs in this case. And they could be any number of inputs. And then they have an output. And again, they could be any number of output. And the inputs and outputs are all numbers, and the output is related to the input through a simple equation. The output equal to I1 times K1 plus I2 times K2 in this case, where K1 and K2 are constants that are associated with this particular node. So essentially, all the calculations in large language models are like this. They're just a linear equation that you use to create an output from an input. So let's extend this idea then more generally. So you have the first layer on the left, and you can see inputs coming in. And then you can see a bunch of outputs that go to the nodes in the second layer. So every input, every node in the first layer can be connected to a node in the second layer. And the dots that you have in the middle represent any number of layers that you could have in the middle. And then finally, you have the last two layers and then an output. And in this diagram, we have three nodes in each layer, but they could be any number of nodes in each layer. And so that's all really there is in principle in a large language model. You have inputs, you have a layer of nodes that calculate stuff and pass it on to the next layer, and it keeps going until you get an output. So in principle, pretty simple. and it's all numbers. So although ChatGPT is doing language, that language is getting converted into numbers, and that's what is getting calculated in the neural network, resulting in some numbers on the other side. And those numbers are the ones that get translated back into words and give you answer back in language. So if you want to put it all together then, so going back to the example that we used, so when you ask a question, what are good institutes in India for mass media studies, that gets converted into numbers, and those numbers are fed into the first layer of the large language model, and then all those calculations happen, and there is the first time is the answer that comes out. So just that word there, and then that answer is then fed back into the input, the same question and the answer there, and then you get R, the second word in the output, and then that keeps going. You add there are into the input, and you get several as the output, and so that's how you construct the entire response. Um, so as I said, each node is associated with constants. So everything depends on those constants. And there are 175 billion of them in ChatGPT, or at least the version of ChatGPT that was there for most of last year. So they are releasing so fast. So by now, probably the number of these parameters or constants has probably increased in their later versions. So you can imagine that the actual neural network that something like ChatGPT uses is huge if you're talking about this many billion of parameters. And in some sense, all the knowledge in the world is encapsulated or encoded in these 175 billion values in ChatGPT. That's pretty amazing, right? That we you can ask any question and get a meaningful answer 99.99% of the time, and it's all done by these a set of these numbers. This um, although there's a bunch of calculations happening, the calculations are very straightforward. The linear equation calculation we talked about earlier. So there is really not that much more going on beyond those calculations and these 135 billion values. So it is magic because scientists don't really understand how or why this works. So they just played around with it and they saw that it seems to work, and they kept improving it and trying different things. And that's how they arrived at the neural networks of today. And that's why sometimes it comes out with nonsense output. So there really is no scientific understanding of why uh, these large language models work. Yeah, so this version of a neural network is called a large language model, and that's the kind of thing that's implemented in ChatGPT, in Copilot, Gemini, all the uh, all the AI tools that are most well known for handling language. There are other neural networks that handle different uh, that do different things, and they may follow a different logic from these large language models. There's a whole bunch of simplification in what I just said, and I left out a lot, like how the model is trained to generate meaningful result. There's a lot more detail in maths, and uh, I mean, I just scratch the surface in my own understanding. So there's a ton more that I don't understand. So coming to the second part, so how is AI going to impact work life and careers? Um, so we can just start by looking at some actual applications of AI so far, many of which you already know, but just a kind of overview. One useful way to look at it might be to think about that there are tools which are ground up AI that are basically built as AI tools and nothing else, that fundamentally, they are AI applications. And there's another class of them where you're using AI to improve the way something else is done. So uh, the uh, the ChatGPT and Copilot and Gemini. So these are all kind of from the ground up. They're basically AI apps, right? So there's nothing else in it but the neural network. But if you take robotics, for example, so today's robotics, they're capable of doing all kinds of funky stuff, and they're bringing together a bunch of stuff. There is mechanical engineering, there's materials, there's electronics, that all that makes the robo able to move and do stuff. And then you build AI, and then you really get a robo that's able to do things uh, that are pretty complicated, and that can really replace humans completely. Another example, so somebody did a course, somebody started a college course where all the course materials, including the textbook, were generated by AI. Self-driving cars. So again, like robotics, you're bringing together a bunch of technologies here. So you have cameras and other sensors that tell the car about the environment, everything that's around it. And then you have a lot of mapping technology so that the car knows the roads and where how to get to where you want to get. And then you add AI on top of that, and then you get a self-driving car. Grammarly is a ground-up AI application. Um, uh, one of the areas where AI is penetrated pretty deeply now is in computer programming. So a huge amount of computer programming nowadays uses AI to help significantly in writing the code. So the developer has the overall idea, but as subtasks, he or she gets a bunch of the code written by an AI and then pulls it all together into the final program. Uh, so then how will AI impact careers? So nobody knows, but we can make educated guesses. Um, so I thought of it as heuristics or rules of thumb. So clearly AI programming jobs will increase, um, but AI will take away a bunch of other programming jobs, as we just said. The other category of jobs is people who can help implement AI in different sectors. So, for example, we know that if you look back to when computers first came in, so people started applying computers to all areas of life. And I mean, in India, the railway reservation system, and then civil engineers and mechanical engineers started doing design using computers, and accountants started maintaining their accounts on the computer, and so on. Like every area now, there is a computer to support you. So that's going to happen with AI too, and it's happening right now. So there are tons of companies looking to apply AI to individual sectors. So if you are a specialist in a particular sector, so if you're a very good lawyer and you understand the law very well, then you likely can find work helping some company to implement AI in the area of law. It would make sense that the more creative and skilled the work you do, the less easy it will be for AI to replace it. But even this is kind of doubtful. Things are moving so fast, and it seems the latest versions of the common tools, they're really thinking at a level that's they're capable of very complex reasoning that most people today don't seem to be capable of, or haven't been trained or educated to do. So uh, I'm not sure how this will all play out. Most manual work can be automated using robots enabled with AI, but it's obviously going to be expensive. And in India, there's going to be a bunch of resistance, presumably from people who are worried about losing their jobs with good reason. So it may take some time to come to India, and of course, these robots robots are going to cost a lot. People will use AI to do more and to do better. Whatever job you're doing, you're likely to be using AI to do the job better and faster. So what that also means is that you got to be open to learning and harnessing AI. So if you resist that change, you might have trouble in the future. Jobs with a human touch, teaching, nursing, counseling, those kind of jobs are harder to be done purely by AI. But again, it's not a hard and fast rule, or we don't know how things are going to play out. So there are people have experimented with chatbots for counseling or therapy, and in some cases, people seem to be comfortable talking to a chatbot rather than a person in terms of feeling more comfortable opening up to a non-human. And in teaching, for example, sure, it seems hard to imagine that you can completely teach without a teacher. But to supplement the teacher, AI, it seems, can do a lot of work in customizing lessons to individual students and getting them to learn in a way that's highly customized for them. So we've had a lot of educational technology, edtech already, but that doesn't seem to have penetrated or lived up to its promise, and AI might take it to the next level. In all areas, so entry-level jobs are the least skilled and the least complex. So presumably these are the ones that will be doable by AI. And one could speculate then, so what happens to every new batch of cohort of students graduating? What will they do? So that's all I had about careers. Some big picture comments to close the talk. So there's certainly lots of alarm and concern in various quarters about how AI is going to work, and is it going to take over, and how many people are going to lose jobs, all of that stuff. So presumably lots of societal resistance. And in training these AIs, they need lots of data to train them uh, to answer questions meaningfully. And they've been trained on content from the web. And in that process, uh, it's stepping on the boundaries of violating copyright or intellectual property. So I put something up on the web, but it's my content and it's my copyright, and you're not allowed to use it without paying me. But uh, companies will take that content and then use it along with everything else to train their AI, and you can't really. After that, it's hard to point out and say, "Hey, look, this answer is mine. It came from me," or something like that. So there's a gray area that's being fought in courts as we speak. AI, of course, takes a lot of computing resources, though. Even here, some of you may have heard of DeepSeek, the new AI tool from China that seems to have reduced computing resources and power consumption significantly. And in any case, this will continue to remain a concern uh, in terms of the impact it's going to have, especially in the times of climate change. And overall, I guess it's going to take some time to come to India for several of the reasons we talked about: societal resistance, costs, and the comparatively lower costs of human labor in India compared to uh, the US, for example. Um, there are valid concerns of machines taking over the world. So, uh, yeah, I'm not qualified at all to have to make any comments on this. Uh, One would assume, though, that this is something that will have to be handled at an international level. All of this work is so easy to go across borders that I think the world as a whole will have to figure out how to take care of the downsides or the risks with AI. No one country can do this. One job of governments will be to make the transition smooth, and policies like universal basic income can help. So that gives people the security uh, to take some time off, to train or to learn new tools, to reskill and take new jobs. Uh, so yeah, the role of government will be really important as AI becomes more and more widespread. That's all I had for this talk. I'd be happy to do a longer, more detailed version of the talk. I think it would be particularly useful for students, STEM students in 11th and 12th, for example. Uh, Also, I mean, and wider audiences too. So feel free to reach out to me if you'd like me to give a version of this talk to some audience that you think could benefit. Thank you.